Hello, friends. I'm here today to talk to you about inflammation. So, I just taught a class last night on the beauty of the pescatarian diet, and we focused specifically on the health benefits of omega-3 essential fatty acids. So, this is something that's very much on my mind, and I thought I would spend just a few minutes talking today about what you might do from a dietary perspective to keep inflammation low or non-existent in the body. So when I talk about inflammation, I actually am not speaking about the more obvious form of inflammation that you might think of when we're talking about like a little cut, right, on your hand, or a skin rash. And that's sort of more acute inflammation. So I'm speaking in this particular context about something more chronic and more hidden. And so this form of chronic hidden inflammation is something that can become very, very damaging to our bodies. So high inflammation in the body, which by the way can be tested. So there's a test that your doctor can run when you get a blood panel done at your maybe annual or biannual checkup. And the test would be looking for something called C-reactive protein. So this is a test where you get a number, and it's like from 0 to 10 is in the ideal range, and anything above that would set off a red flag. And if your C-reactive protein is high, what sort of tends to be problematic about that is that then you're setting yourself up for compromised bone health, arterial health, brain health. Many times at that point, you may be a good candidate for some cancers. So this is not to scare, but it's to educate. And I think it's a really, really important thing that we look at. And there's so much incredible research and data out now about inflammation. And I think that there are so many things that we can do so that are very low tech. So things that you can do at home that really don't involve a lot. They do involve a lot of, I think, consciousness and just, concerted effort every day. But keeping inflammation low in the body, we've already talked about why it's important. So how do we do that? From a dietary perspective, the best way to combat inflammation is to maintain something called the alkaline diet. And you can look a little further into that. I'm not going to go into great detail. But basically, the body is always fighting, for lack of a better word, to maintain homeostasis in every system of our body. But our pH balance is something that's super, super important or we die. So our pH ranges anywhere from 0 to 14. And the low end is in the acidic range. So, stomach acid, battery acid are like all the way down at 1 or 2. And then as you get higher up, you're going into the more alkaline range. So our ideal number is around 7.4. So it's just ever so slightly alkaline. And our body is always, always looking to maintain this particular balance. So what are some things that we want to stay away from that are more acidic? We want to stay away from, whenever possible, things like white refined sugar, red meat, alcohol, smoking, stress, lack of exercise. And then you want to look at some of your environmental pollutants, some of your like household cleaners, for instance, or personal care products. I would pay very much attention to the pesticide load on your fruits and vegetables, the pesticides that are contained in your animal products. So these are all things that you can address. How do we then increase alkalinity? So we talked about what's not good, right? So we want to stay out of the acidic range. If we want to get more alkaline, what are some things that we want to look to eat? So one of the best ways to become alkaline is actually to have a glass of lemon water first thing in the morning. So if you can get up and have a glass of room temperature water, squeeze as much lemon as you can tolerate into the glass, that actually presents a beautiful opportunity to just get alkaline first thing in the morning. And it's interesting because I talk about this a lot in my cooking classes. We always think about lemons as being very acidic. And on the outside of our body, they are acidic. It's something I would use in a salad dressing as my acid. But inside the body, they have an alkaline effect. So I find that super interesting. So lemons are great. Green leafy vegetables are amazing, and I want to specifically highlight the family of cruciferous vegetables. So this includes things like broccoli and cauliflower and kale, arugula, Brussels sprouts. It's a very long list, but there's lots of good stuff in there. And this particular group of vegetables, I can't even tell you how incredibly beneficial they are to our health. They're really, really great for detoxification of the liver, just as a separate aside. But a rather big aside. But today what I want to focus on is their effect on alkalinity. So they're really, really wonderful. But what I want to mention is that going into fall and winter, as we are right now, you really want to look to incorporate these vegetables in a cooked manner. So if you can steam or roast or include them in soups, that's a really wonderful way to get your fill of cruciferous vegetables. And particularly if you're someone who has a thyroid malfunction. So if you are low on thyroid hormone or hypothyroid, you particularly want to pay close attention to having this group of vegetables cooked. Very, very important. So cruciferous vegetables. And then the last thing that I want to talk about from a dietary perspective is the inclusion of omega-3 essential fatty acids. So essential fatty acids are things that our body needs but doesn't make, which is really strange. They're essential, we need them, but our body doesn't make them. So we have to get them from somewhere else. And Americans tend to be very, very low on omega-3 essential fatty acids and very, very high on omega-6 essential fatty acids. And omega-6 essential fatty acids tend to create inflammation. They're pro-inflammatory, especially when we consume them in the very, very large quantities that we do. So the number one, I would say, item that we consume in America that's high in omega-6s is canola oil. And canola oil is in everything. And as a chef, and then also as a health coach who's very, very focused on nutrition, but particularly as a chef, I'm trying to get the message out that we've got to get away from the canola oil. It's in all of our restaurants. It's in a lot of our cooking schools, and it's super pro-inflammatory. So we get far too much omega-6 and far too little omega-3. So if we can focus on getting away from the canola oil and bringing in things like flax and hemp and walnuts, and then things like salmon and other small oily fish. So the fish are a wonderful source of omega-3s, and wild Alaskan salmon is my greatest recommendation. You can do salmon roe, or the eggs, if you actually can tolerate it. And then apart from salmon, focus on the small oily fish like sardines, anchovies, maybe smelt. We don't do so many of those in this country, but they're really, really incredibly good for you. And they're low in toxicity. So when we talk about eating seafood now, unfortunately, we have to have the conversation about doing a cost-benefit analysis. Because our oceans are so polluted, we want to look really to have sources that are very low in toxicity. So any of the fish that are quite large have likely been in the oceans longer, right? They're older, and they're higher up on the food chain. So they've likely consumed several smaller species of fish. And so that aggregate concentration of toxicity is just not a good thing. So the smaller, the better. So that's my spiel on omega-3s. If you don't eat a lot of fish, I would recommend that you look for a high quality, purity tested fish oil supplement, either in capsule or liquid form. Get the best one that you can buy, okay? Again, it's a toxicity issue. So get the best one you can buy. You can also use krill oil, and you can also use algae. So I've talked before about using chlorella powder, but you can use spirulina or chlorella. These are all really also wonderful forms of omega-3s. So, and leafy greens too. You have to eat a lot of them, but leafy greens are wonderful for omega-3s. So that's what I'd like to talk about in the way of a dietary approach. And then the other things that we can do to keep inflammation down from a lifestyle perspective would be to decrease stress. And I think I have mentioned that in every one of these particular capsules I've done. Decreasing stress is so important. Increasing exercise, so really, really getting a lot of movement in the body. And it doesn't mean going to the gym necessarily, but some form of movement. And getting the lymphatic system moving. So yoga is wonderful, as is Tai Chi, walking. Actually, one of the most wonderful forms of exercise, which I personally don't do, but I'd love to try, is getting on a trampoline. So that's supposed to be one of the best things that you can do, is jump up and down on a trampoline for like 10 minutes a day. You can also think about increasing fiber in general. So those are all things that I think will help keep your inflammation low and keep you healthy. So that's it for now, friends. I wish you all wellness, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.